All right, I think we should get going. I'm sure we'll have some others kind of straggling in over the next few minutes, but I'd like to welcome everyone to our webinar today. My name is Adam Bookman from Propelics. Today we'll be discussing real-world challenges in building a mobile strategy with some Propelics clients on the phone, Mike Baca from AmerisourceBergen and Rami Webhe from Bank of Montreal. We also have a special guest, Maribel Lopez from Lopez Research, and Glenn Gruber, a senior mobile strategist from Propelics, will be moderating the discussion today. I'm just going to take you through the introduction. I want to let everyone know that we are accepting questions all throughout the discussion. You can enter in a question on the Q&A panel on the WebEx screen. So please do so, and we'll hope to get to many of your questions. Before we get going in earnest, I guess I should also say that we are going to be recording the webinar, and the recording will be available afterwards, after probably tomorrow. We'll send around an email that the recording's available, so if you miss something, you'll be able to grab it from the website. Just had a couple of introductory slides about Propelics before we get into the full discussion, just so you know where we're coming from. Propelics is a company that creates mobile strategies and world-class apps for the enterprise. We have very deep background with working with enterprise clients on multiple technologies, but for the last number of years, we focused almost exclusively on mobile. We're based in San Jose with offices in Boston, Pittsburgh, and Guadalajara. However, we work around the world. You can see some of the clients we work for there. Just wanted to talk to you a little bit about some of the services that we offer. We offer mobile strategy services on the business side. We work with business teams to define mobile use cases. A lot of organizations are still struggling with where to start with mobile, and even if they have a couple apps out there, how to build a cohesive mobile app strategy, what apps to build, what order to build them in, how do you prioritize app ideas, how do you know if an app idea is a good idea, and how do you avoid the wild west of app development. So we had some kickstarts to help with that. We do a lot of work with IT teams to ensure that they're ready for the wave of mobile that's coming their way, or the changing aspects of mobile that are occurring. So we work closely with CIOs and their teams to build out mobile roadmaps, both on the infrastructure side around application delivery and policies and security and risk, and on the application development side to transform IT organizations around skill sets, tools required for mobile app development, as well as mobile testing, mobile support, even mobile UX standards, mobile branding. There's a lot new and different with mobile, and sometimes it's hard to to come up with a plan that really that moves at the pace of mobile that your organization can support. We do a lot of work with Mobile Center of Excellence creation, and I think there'll be some discussion about that on the webinar today. We have a full application development services around application architecture and support. We've introduced new offerings for those of you who've been on our calls around mobile testing as a service and mobile support, Tier 2 and Tier 3 support as a service. Another exciting development is together with Maribel Lopez from Lopez Research, we've launched the Mobile Research Council. This is a council of executives from Fortune 1000 companies who come together on an online community, as well as with monthly online meetings, and we're having our first meetup in San Diego in May together as a group for Mobile Research Council members to get together to network, to discuss what's going on in the trenches of mobile without vendors involved. So it's really no vendor bias, but it's a great way to discuss what's going on. And Maribel, who's going to be on the call today, provides some really great research and perspective on the call, and the Propelics team also from tactically on the ground of what they're seeing. Both AmerisourceBergen and Bank of Montreal are members of the Mobile Research Council, as well as many others, and it's something that I think you should look into. And finally, Propelics is moving into the product space. We're starting to offer some of our clients SaaS products where we've seen use cases over and over again at many of our clients where there's a need to do these three use cases that you can see on the screen. The first one is audits, whether they're store audits or people audits or machine audits, providing a nice framework to allow you to easily enter in questions and capture results. We have a nice app that allows you to do conference room booking and mapping that connects to your exchange and allows you to see what conference rooms are available, how far away they are from you, and book them. And finally, we have an app that helps with event management from folks who are attending events, who are capturing leads, and a way to manage leads across events. So that's the Propelics spiel. We're happy to talk to you more about that, but I think we should just get right into the conversation now. Glenn, I'm going to hand it over to you, and we're looking forward to the discussion. Let me just pass you presenter rights and take it away.
Awesome. Thank you, Adam, and thanks everyone for joining. Really excited for today's conversation, in large part because it's going to be a conversation instead of, what you might typically see in webinars. This is our first kind of roundtable discussion, so we're going to, happy to have Mike Baca, as mentioned earlier, from AmerisourceBergen, and Rami Webhe from BMO, who I've both had the pleasure to work with, in the past as well, and also to have Maribel Lopez on the call, who I've known for a number of years too. So I think we're going to have a great discussion, and I think it's really good to get not just what people like myself and Maribel think about what's going on, but you'll hear it from, contemporaries like Mike and Rami, and, get their real life stories. So I think it'll be a really great conversation today. So quick agenda, we'll do some introductions. Then Maribel and I are going to kind of run a little bit of a state of the mobile enterprise, state of the union kind of conversation to set the table. And then we'll get right into the roundtable. And then at the end, we're hoping to leave about 10, 15 minutes for some audience Q&A. We got a number of questions already in advance during the registration process, and we certainly encourage you to add questions throughout the event in the Q&A box on the WebEx right-hand side of the app. So let's get started with the introductions. So myself, I'm a senior mobile strategist at Propelics. Been here for a couple of years. I've worked with a number of different clients, but do have a personal affinity towards the travel sector as well, and worked with a number of clients there. But enough about me. Let's talk about the people that you really want to hear from. So I want to introduce Maribel Lopez. Maribel is the founder of Lopez Research, which is a market research and strategy consulting firm that specializes in convergence of mobile, Internet of Things, cloud, and big data, and how they impact businesses. She's a noted author and also a co-founder of the Mobile Research Council, which, along with Propelics, which Adam mentioned a few moments ago. Also, we have Mike Baca. He's the director of the Mobility Center of Excellence at AmerisourceBergen. He founded that. AmerisourceBergen is a Fortune 30 healthcare services company. And the mission of the MCOE is to leverage the power of mobility in support of business goals. In addition to his day job, Mike is also serves as a program coordinator for the Bachelor of Information Systems degree program at the West Coast School and Muhlenberg College, where he teaches as well. And throughout his career, he's helped kind of bridge the gap between people, technology, and a number of different roles. And so we're really happy to have him on the call today. And then lastly, we have Rami. He's a program manager and solution architect at the Bank of Montreal. Rami leads the strategy, implementation, and operations planning and execution of multifaceted cross-functional mobility programs at BMO. He collaborates with the technology side and to identify strategic and innovative uses of technology to drive business growth and profitability, and also helps incorporate best practices through benchmarking and establishing standards and putting in place key measures and metrics for BMO's mobile initiatives. So we're here today to have a discussion about developing an enterprise mobility strategy. We all know that it's a complicated subject, and as you can see here, there's a number of different factors that a mobile strategy needs to encompass. So we're always trying to balance to make sure that the technical decisions are in alignment with the requirements of the business, as well as be sure that we're keeping current with what's going on in the market, where the technology is going, what our competitors are doing, what are other players and other industries doing, as well, where can we learn, and then also understand what government and industry regulations may impact our actions in developing our mobile strategies. So keeping all those elements in balance, communicating the resulting mobile strategy throughout the organization, and bringing together the various teams in the organization who might not recognize that these new methods that mobile requires or are different than what they've been doing in their own kind of organizational silo can be a real challenge. And that's why we brought this panel together, so that you can learn from, some of your contemporaries in here, how they're building their own mobile roadmaps. We hope that you'll take away some good perspectives from today's discussion, and that you can bring a few things about building a mobile strategy back into your own company after this is over. So before we get into the kind of the mobile enterprise state of the union, maybe I could ask Mike and Rami to just talk a little about their environment in their companies with respect to mobile, just to better set the stage and understand kind of where they're coming from. So, Mike, why don't you go first? If you could just take a minute or two.
Sure. I mean, AmerisourceBergen historically has been sort of a under-the-radar type company who thrived on delivering drugs and being part of the pharmaceutical supply chain, kind of operating with a low-cost, keep the lights running mentality. Over the past 2 years, though, actually longer, maybe 3 or 4 years, they've kind of stepped out and become a more innovative, active participant in the healthcare space. And coinciding with that was sort of the recognition that mobility needed to play a larger role within the company. So 2 years ago, IT wanted to kind of get on top of this new wave of mobility and created the Mobility Center of Excellence. So the Mobility Center of Excellence here is basically a conduit for bringing mobile technology into the company. We wanted to corral and sort of get in front of the wave of mobility initiatives. We had found the business, was beginning to kind of go out and around IT to look for solutions and to introduce new solutions. So to get on top of that and ahead of that curve, we created the office and issued some governance statements, and then basically slowly kind of brought the various initiatives in through the MCOE through the rest of the company. So as of right now, we are sort of the main focal point for mobility within the company. And what we do is a combination of research and vetting of new technologies to see if they might have a fit to enable the business. In addition, we develop custom solutions as well. So one of the things we don't get involved with at this level, unlike some other MCOEs, we don't have a direct involvement in managing BYOD programs or managing carrier costs or dealing with the hardware and sort of maintenance issues regarding mobility. So we're more on the solution side. We actively seek ways to help the business do what they do better.
Awesome. Thank you, Mike. And Rami, maybe you could just give, like a kind of elevator pitch of what's going on in your role at BMO with mobile.
Yeah, thank you, Glenn. Yeah, in BMO, as you know, we are in a financial business with 50,000 employees with business all over the world. So, and the business see big potential in mobility to support the end user productivity and how to make sure our users are more dynamic and more agile and more competitive. So we have, from enterprise, from mobility perspective, we had the big discussion internally around internal versus external mobility. So for me, in my role, I am focusing the enterprise internal mobility strategy, and we do coordination with external. So when we say external mobility, when what BMO offer for consumer as business to consumer B2C. So my program is mainly around B2E, business to end user. So we consolidate all mobility initiatives to make sure we will be able to offer a great value for our end user to make them more dynamic and more agile. Mobility in BMO is evolving like any other enterprise organizations. It started from technology, and now we try to see how we move that concept to be more business-oriented and how we can offer more value for our business by enhancing the end-user operations, the value, and also to, as the ultimately is how to see we will be able to revenue generation. So we have, like any other enterprise organization, multiple mobile technology that we would like to share in this discussion, what we are doing, and but at the end, we are trying to design about our end user needs to make sure they are more dynamic.
Terrific. All right, thanks, Rami. Okay, so let's keep going. Now, these next couple of slides are actually statistics that come from Lopez Research. So, Maribel, why don't I let you speak to those?
Sure, that's great. Thanks, Glenn. So, as mentioned before, I'm Maribel. I run a market research firm, and we basically do a enterprise mobility benchmark. And we do a big benchmark every 6 months and a smaller benchmark every on the in-between quarters. And so over time, as we've added more and more companies, we've seen certain numbers go up and down. So in some earlier surveys, we had over 50% of the companies that we spoke to saying they have a strategy, but now as we have a larger panel, we're at about 48. But I think this is actually a really great evolution of what's happened with mobility. So when we first started out, it was in the 30s, and a lot of what I've seen happen over time is that people stopped building strategies because the market was moving so fast, they just couldn't get a handle on it. Now what I think is, there's been some things have settled, a lot of things are still moving fast, and the concept of a rolling strategy seems to be much more popular with companies. They go back, they reevaluate the 5-year plan. While it's not dead, is not really relevant in the context of mobility. So we're moving into a concept where a lot of organizations are building dynamic plans around mobility. They understand it's important, and they're just trying to figure out how to prioritize it in the overarching scope of all of the IT projects they have, because we have mobile, cloud, big data and analytics, and some people are really focused on social as well. So all of those are 4 big technology changes, particularly around mobile and cloud within an IT organization. Next slide. And the other interesting thing that's been happening is we have BYOD, we could call it BYO Apps as well. So people are seeing a large influx of devices and apps. And originally they wanted to shut that down, but now they're actually embracing the concept of BYO, trying to get ahead of it, realizing that BYOD isn't necessarily about cost savings, but more about choice for your organization and allowing you to get more employees mobile enabled faster. And then how you do that and what you allow them to do is part of that mobile strategy that we just talked about. Next slide. So we're seeing a lot of people looking at mobile app enablement, particularly on the enterprise. We've talked a lot about what's going on in consumer. There's been a lot of activity in consumer. Now there's a lot of business to employee, business to partner apps that are starting to come on. So we're seeing a large portion of the organization planning to mobile enable 20 or more apps. We're going to talk a little bit about that today, I'm sure, but this concept of what you mobile enable first, how you mobile enable it, how many different development styles that you want and approaches you want to have around this, who the stakeholders are, and how big and meaningful are those apps? Are they micro apps? Are they something more in the order of magnitude of a whole ERP system? Are choices that people are actively pursuing today. And I think that's great. We as analysts, I have stood up and talked about the year of the mobile app for years now, but I actually think on the enterprise side that, this year is the year of the mobile app for a lot of the companies that we're speaking to. So it's a truly exciting time. Glenn, I'm going to turn it back over to you.
Okay. Thank you, Maribel. So I also wanted to cover some stats that I saw in the most recent Accelerator study, which I think is also particularly interesting because it highlights some things that maybe sometimes what you see is a disconnect between what the IT management thinks is going on and then what the developers on the ground think. I think, the developers in all, over the last number of years have kind of, I don't know if you'd say grown with power, but if you listen to what some of the Red Monk folks talk about, they're really leading a lot of what's interesting going on and have a good sense for it. So there's some interesting stuff here. So, in this first one, so how are we doing? How would you characterize an organization's mobile maturity? That's going to be a subject that we'll talk about later today. And Maribel has talked a little bit about how that's evolving. People are getting strategies. Now they're talking about app portfolio strategies. But these, I thought that this kind of perception differential survey is always a lot of fun to take a look at. Here, IT decision makers, believe that the overall mobile maturity of the organization kind of fit into the top two box, which is the leading edge or somewhat ahead. They feel very good about what's going on within the organization relative to their competitors and peers. But it's a very different kind of view than what you see from the developers on the ground, many of whom are probably experimenting with new languages and have side projects going on, and maybe talk to a lot of other people who are similarly experimenting with new stuff. And they've got a little bit more of a pessimistic view of where things stand. I mean, there's certainly a good, but this is more of a kind of a normal distribution compared to the IT decision makers where, on whole, we're doing okay. But we're not really killing it. And so it just kind of underscores that there's so much more to do and within developing a mobile strategy. And this survey in particular doesn't cover what the business thinks of the mobile maturity of the IT and development organizations. But, my guess is that it's going to look more like the developer view than it does the IT decision maker. So, the divergent views don't stop there. This is something else I thought was kind of interesting. IT leaders and developers can't even necessarily agree on who's choosing the tools that they use. I mentioned earlier that developers have started to become real power brokers on what tools actually get used. Again, if you read some of the Red Monk stuff, you'll see that the same thing is happening across many different technologies. It was particularly true with the cloud when developers were often going around IT procurement, but buying AWS resources on credit cards rather than waiting on long procurement provisioning cycles. And so these charts kind of show a similar situation where developers are kind of making some of their own decisions in what they're actually doing versus kind of the perspective of IT. So again, in having good governance and putting together the mobile strategy and the direction that you want to take the organization, there's a lot of, this underscores that there's still a lot more work to be done. And then finally, kind of who's setting the mobile agenda within the organization, and this will be, kind of a good segue into our first question of the roundtable. The good news here is that when it comes to the doing of mobile, the design, the development, the tools, there's pretty good alignment that IT is taking the leading role. But it's still interesting to note that the line of business still controls these functions in 1/3 of the companies. And there's often been a number of stats about how there may be a lot of mobile going on in your organization, but you just may not know about it. And I think that some of that is with marketing leading things, as well as, maybe that's where some of the focus of the consumer-facing application work is happening. But when you look at who's setting the mobile agenda and who's responsible for the vision and the strategy, kind of the views here couldn't be more different. 2/3 of IT leaders say that it's IT, while the developer view is basically flipped. with IT having only responsibility for this, 34% of the time. And none of that even really gets into the where does that responsibility sit? Is there a chief mobility officer, as a role that was talked about for a while? Is it the mobile center of excellence who's providing the leadership, if such leadership even exists within the organization? So these are a lot of the kind of questions that we know that enterprises are dealing with in developing their mobile strategy, and is a great lead into the first question, and who's setting the mobile agenda. And so let's get started here. Mike, why don't we start with you? Tell us a bit of how kind of mobile evolved at AmerisourceBergen, and how you've decided on managing and setting the strategy and vision for mobile within the company.
AmerisourceBergen is comprised of many different business units, but the largest business unit is the drug company, which is part of the wholesale drug supply chain. Historically, that business unit's been a very conservative business unit, as I referred to earlier. Some of the other business units are a little bit more progressive in technology and progressive based on the type of business model they have. So what we had basically were small pockets of mobility spread throughout the various companies. But by and large, there was no cohesive approach to mobility. There was nothing centralized. Everyone was sort of going their own way. And the danger was that that would continue to expand, and the business would, do an end run around IT altogether, and engage vendors directly. So we kind of, the first foray into the mobility space was dealing with the BYOD problem. And so the group internally responsible for, mobile phones and that sort of thing sort of got a handle on that, came up with a strategy, and kind of guided that process. A little after that is when we decided to institute the MCOE. And from day one, it's sort of been the MCOE's charter to set the agenda for the company. But, as we all know, that's easier said than done. So a lot of my time, the first year of the MCOE, was spent evangelizing to the business, letting folks know what was possible, what we could do, and highlighting the promise and potential of mobility as well by showing, future state. If we put a little investment into this particular initiative, this is the end result. And I'd say not to go outside the bounds of the question here, but the big thing for us was to dip our toe in the water and, actually get in and swim rather than kind of set at sort of a high level and say this is the direction. We started doing projects from day one. And once people began to see that progress, they began to realize it was possible to introduce mobility here. It became much easier then to be the governing body that also sets the agenda.
Cool, thank you. And Rami, I know that at BMO, Bank of Montreal, that you guys took a little bit of a different tack to that. Maybe you could tell us a bit about how mobility has evolved at BMO, and kind of how the leadership for setting that vision has, sits.
Yeah, thank you, Glenn. So here, first, I would like, there are two components with respect to the enterprise mobility agenda. There are, first, who set and who contribute to build this agenda, and the second part, how to follow the agenda and to make sure the agenda is as a reference for all enterprise mobility activity. So first I will talk about how we build our enterprise mobility agenda. So the main stakeholders in Bank of Montreal, as you know, we are in a regulated business. So first they have the business, line of business input in all the mobility activity, but at the same time we have the technical lead and the governance lead. So because the line of business, they have good understanding what they need from mobility to address a specific business operation or pain. But however, the business leader, they don't have insight about what are the capability of the mobile at this stage, what are the capability available in the market to be able to support all those business needs. And that's where the technical leaders, the CIOs from all line of business have to put their input to specify what are possible in different stages and how to do that. And the third dimension, which is very critical in a financial institution, is the governance. And here, when we talk about governance, we are talking about security, compliance, privacy, legal, all of that, risk. All of that, they have a key input about in the agenda of the mobility. So here, how we can summarize about the agenda, it is business will specify what, and the technology leaders plus the governance specify how to adopt those to make sure it is very clear. So the second part, how we execute that, how we leverage this mobility, so we don't have at this stage mobile center of excellence, but we have mobility executive steering committee where we have representatives from all line of business, from CIOs offices, and from all the key departments. And then we have other mobility operations steering committee who execute the main decisions that we get or we build at the executive level. So this is the approach, and this is how we build the mobility agenda in BMO.
Okay, thanks. I think that just listening to the two of you guys, it just underscores that there's no one way to kind of crack this nut, and that based on sometimes it's the culture of the company, sometimes it's just how things organically evolve. You wind up with different structures, but it doesn't mean that it doesn't work as well in different places. So Maribel, you speak to a lot of different companies about how they're developing their mobile strategies. Kind of what are you hearing? What are you seeing in terms of the leadership and the setting of the agenda?
Yeah, I think you picked up on a lot of the themes right there. So on the MCOE, I find that MCOEs are very valuable for large companies that have lots of business units, and they're trying to find some ways to unify certain aspects of what's going on in mobile and provide some guidance, because they want to have some consistency even though they have lots of different business units. And it's also good to help prevent people from reinventing the wheel and overspending in capital. In the smaller companies, I'm seeing occasionally they do an MCOE, but they're looking more at different lines of business have been driving it. I think one of the big challenges for people is to figure out, what am I going to do in mobile that drives value? How do I deliver ROI in mobile? And in order to do that, I think you really need to work with a line of business leaders. So a lot of people's mobile efforts, similar to the slide that you showed earlier, started out with, marketing's already done something, or sales has already done something, or there's somebody has come and said, I've purchased this, or I want to do this, or we have an app for this, but I need to connect it into a systems of record. And that's how a lot of the early mobile efforts have started for a lot of the companies, and say, this is a problem, we need to get ahead of it. I thought Mike brought up something really interesting with this concept of a lot of this hinges, like when you really need to have that mobile strategy or when you really start to develop these mobile apps, hinges on how much BYOD you've allowed into the organization as well. Because after you get email on devices, and a lot of devices, then people start wanting to do real work, and you start saying, you've done an audit, and you realize you have some insecure apps on your devices, and you realize people want to collaborate and communicate. So I think there's two things. One, I think it's line of business. Two, I think if it's big, it's a lot of MCOE-driven. And then three, I think once you do BYOD, there is an influx of demand of saying, hey, I want to do A, B, C. So it's a little different for different size companies, and it's definitely different for different geographies. For example, the BYOD thing is very different as you get outside of, say, the North American landscape in terms of how much that's happening and what people can do and how big of a concern privacy is as well, stalling some of that apps and use of technology.
Excellent. That's really good insights. Okay, so let's move to the next question. So just to set a little context, at Propelics, when we talk about the evolution of a mobile strategy, we often refer to this law of three, which is 3 stages of mobile maturity. At first, there's a lot of excitement around the idea of we need to be doing something with mobile, but a lot of what happens there is just kind of the email, contacts, and calendar. Not exactly earth-shattering, but it does help, as we talked about with BYOD, get some of the foundations in place. Then companies will move to the kind of process innovation stage where they're enabling and provisioning or building apps that extend existing business processes and systems. So think of Concur for expense management or access to CRM or business dashboards. And then lastly, when we get to the game changer part is where the highest value gets unlocked for the enterprise. So where we're creating real innovation to either change business processes completely or provide new services or capabilities that just couldn't exist before because of some of the functions that just being mobile and some of the capabilities on a device can unlock. But it's really hard to move through these stages. Maribel, as you talked about earlier, 3/4 of the companies are now starting to think about building, enterprise apps, in earnest. But still, the number of apps that have been built is fairly low. So this is a tough nut to solve to kind of move through this process. So that kind of leads into the next question, which is, what was the hardest part of getting beyond email, contacts, and calendar and starting to actually build some of these next value level apps within your org? So, Rami, why don't we start with you this time?
Yeah, thank you, Glenn. I think the hardest part in here, as you know, mobility started in our enterprise organization in around BlackBerry, where the email, contacts, and calendar was the key functionality that we were trying to offer to all our users. But then the potential in how to extend all the mobile or all the business application to mobile users, that was the biggest challenge. Like the CRM, Salesforce, all those key business applications, users on the business, they see big value. However, most of those applications are not designed or built for mobile. And also, as you know, there is heavy part in the back end and also compatibility part. So we had to work heavily to specify what we can offer in the short term from those applications. So the prioritization and putting clear expectations with the business, what we can offer and how we can offer it, that was a key part. After we complete the email, contacts, and calendar, we named them as a foundational component, and we put a strategy with a roadmap about mobile application portfolio, that what we can achieve at which stage, and how much the investment and the value that our business will get. Because as you know, line of business, they expect to get every and each business application on mobile. So we need to put a clear expectation, clear strategy, which application should go first to mobile.
Great. And you talked about how you're historically a BlackBerry shop, and a lot of those third-party apps weren't supported with for BlackBerry. So I know that you certainly had some that helped evolve your BYOD strategy to start embracing the iOS and maybe Android platforms. So that's Yeah,
this is a very good point, because as you know that the iOS came to the enterprise domain because of that potential in the app. So, and this is where the BlackBerry was behind. So we had to work heavily with different vendors to see the partnership. But most of those key business apps, they start with iOS, Android, and they don't have any clear plan when they will be able to offer those solutions for BlackBerry. So that was a bigger challenge, and that was one of the drivers to change the strategy and how to add iOS and other platforms to the enterprise.
Okay, thank you. Now, Mike, you mentioned earlier that you guys kind of jumped right in to start, building stuff, and kind of just, so maybe you could just add a little bit more color to that, and how you kind of got some of the different groups on board to want to do more.
Sure. I think once you've got email, contacts, and calendar on your personal or corporate device, that's half the battle right there. I think the next step is kind of choosing, where do I go next? And I think that the thing there is you've got to make sure you're adding value and not just doing sort of a me-too approach, or not just maybe rendering a website optimized for mobile or something like that. You've got to present true value and I think kind of exploit the paradigm of mobility and all that entails. One of the things we did early on, in fact, it was our first solutions initiative, was go out to a third party and bring a event management application into the mix. There was an upcoming very high-level executive management meeting coming up, and that group was looking for a way to better manage the meeting and better present materials and better distribute information. So rather than sit and maybe develop something on our own, we said, listen, here's an opportunity, let's jump on it. Let's show the business, and especially the executive team, what mobility can bring to the table. So we actually went out to a third-party vendor, brought in an event management app, debuted it as our first quote-unquote solution at this executive meeting, and it was the right audience. It actually hit a nerve and generated a lot of enthusiasm. In prior meetings of this nature, you know, the materials would be distributed maybe in PDF form or maybe on their laptops or maybe via a website. But with the ability to engage the attendees with mobile-centric paradigms like instant polling, like getting feedback from the audience, like social networking within the meeting, like chats, like updated materials, these were things that the executive team could actually understand and see in action. So I think for us, it was kind of getting beyond that, you know, let's just mobilize a website kind of thing to how can we make an impact and change the way things were done before. And that opportunity kind of gave us that moment. And again, rather than spend a lot of time trying to develop a custom solution, we decided to dip our toe in the water and go with something that was already out there, and it really helped put us on the map.
Okay. Thanks, Mike. And Maribel, just because you were talking about how companies are really like this is going to be the year of the enterprise and mobile. Anything that you want to add in terms of the conversations you've had with different folks?
Yes, so there's a couple things. One is I find that once people have email, contacts, and calendar, as Rami and Mike mentioned, all the groups are going to want something. So then you end up in you go from thinking there might be 5 or 6 use cases to you now have, say, over 100 use cases. So the number of use cases goes up really quickly, which means you have to prioritize them. And then there's a question of, do you prioritize them by groups? Do you prioritize them by things that go across the entire company? Can you tie any of those things directly to one of your key KPIs, which are something like, is it going to drive revenue? Is it going to reduce costs? Is it going to make us more productive? Something that's measurable. So I think one of the hardest things about moving to mobile for companies is A, figuring out how do you prioritize, and B, being able to prove that value. So you did something, what came of it? So a great example somebody said to me once was like, hey, I can already do expense approvals with an email on my phone, clicking accept, right? Mobile enabling that in a different way isn't going to deliver any value. So what are you going to mobile enable that delivers new value or really makes process better? And then to Mike's point, which I think is more of an afterthought for most companies, I think Mike's pretty far ahead on this, is the concept of what's different about mobile. What can you do in mobile that you couldn't do before? Is there some sensor that data you can take advantage of, some functionality in the device, camera, location, some of the unique attributes of mobile, building those in.
Thanks. Okay. So, kind of setting the goals, and maturing mobile operations, where you started versus and what was important then versus what's important now, obviously, changes, can change a lot, especially as fast as mobile, can move. So, Mike, in terms of, your mobile maturity and the objectives that you have, can you characterize, sort of that evolution there?
Sure. I kind of alluded to it before, but I think initially our focus was on showcasing the promise and potential of mobility. So again, it was about getting out there, getting some solutions up and running rather quickly, to get momentum, to generate interest, to educate and evangelize. And then we did that, and actually we had sort of a dog and pony show where we took some folks from our team on the road and did demos at different business sites to show what was available, what was emerging, and how we could help the business. All this kind of ended up generating a lot of interest, and we found ourselves with a fairly full pipeline at the end of year one. So we spent the last year kind of putting things in order, getting our shop in order. So we began implementing governance policies. We began coming up with our own methodology and SDLC Agile process. We began making sure that we involved all the right parties in IT, architecture, security, legal and compliance, collaboration. Because at this point now we had some things to work with. We knew what we wanted to do. We knew what the business was interested in. I don't think we could have done that initially without stifling interest or stifling innovation, at least in our particular case. That's not always the case, obviously, with every business. So I think it was important for us the first year to kind of get the interest moving, get things in the pipeline, and then second year kind of take a step back and say, okay, now we've got all this work to do. While we're doing this, let's think of a way to make all this stuff repeatable, auditable, maintainable, and completed in a quality and orderly fashion. And that's kind of where we're at right now.
Okay, great. So what I want to do is kind of maybe, I think the last two questions kind of lead into this next one, which I know that, I've seen a couple of questions from the studio audience about already, which is, so as your objectives are evolving and your organizations are evolving and getting prepared to be able to do more, how are you measuring success? What are those metrics that you utilize? Is it stuff like number of apps, number of downloads, revenue impact, cost savings, and also whether or not those basic KPIs, are they the same metrics that you're using to measure your team? Are they the same metrics that are used to measure, your own success? And the impact that you're having on the organization. So, Rami, do you want to kick this one off?
Yeah, briefly here around this subject. So our key measure and reference here is how to contribute in end-user productivity. So we put in our vision is that how mobility will be able to help in supporting employee productivity, operational effectiveness, customer satisfaction, and ultimately revenue generation. Because, as you know, time, cost, and change the way our users are working to be more competitive. So we put those factors to see how each mobile service or approach that we offer will help users to be more dynamic and how that will change. So we try to map between those services that we offer and how that will be reflected. And we put the vision that to provide mobile technology that enable anywhere, anytime, secure access to information, and measure what if there is any security compromise, because also in our measure is the security and compliance are the other factors. So productivity, operational effectiveness, customer satisfaction, and revenue are those key components that we measure in any mobile initiative.
Thank you. Maribel, let me swing this over to you, just to kind of get your perspective on this and what you're hearing and advising clients as well.
Okay, so the first thing is a lot of companies don't measure success right now, and a lot of companies don't instrument apps. And I think that the first thing that we went through in what I would call Mobile 1.0 was around downloads. How many downloads did I get? And people rapidly realized that downloads do not equal engagement. So you might have downloaded it, used it once or twice, and then you don't use it anymore. And that's the same for consumer and for enterprise apps, actually. So on the last question, one of the things that I think is important is the concept that you have executive support and people that want to help you with a mobile adoption and say, hey, we think this is important. We'd like you to use these tools. If you have that, then getting people to download the tools is one thing. Then getting them to engage with it is another, and understanding how often they engage with that solution, what they're doing with that solution. Is it performing the way it should perform? Is it crashing? Does it take too long to create a process? All of these are things that companies should be measuring, but many aren't measuring today. And then we can get into sort of higher order level of things where if you are measuring, you might be able to figure out, did I close deals? One company I spoke with said that I shaved a week off closing deal times by being able to integrate these two processes and having them on a mobile app. Or I was able to get I spoke to one pharma company and they had a scenario where they did a trial and they shaved 45 days off of their receivables. They logged all of the product that they dropped off at samples. They didn't lose any product. There wasn't like a shrinkage concept. And they were also able to bill for things faster. So they're depending on what your organization is and what kind of goals you have, there are different ways to measure success. But I think the first thing is you have to measure it, and then you have to say, here's something you can go back to management and say, this is the tangible result I got out of my first couple of quick wins. Sometimes it's an experience win. So, for example, a lot of people love conference room and mapping applications. People can now find conference rooms, know if they're available, find where the cafeteria is if they go to a new area. So they have a high engagement rate on the app, not necessarily a monetarily quantifiable ROI. But that's one of those things that, like what Mike was saying earlier, is, hey, you get people using it, you get people excited about it, and then you go to the next higher order level. But driving engagement is really important as one of the first metrics for success, I think.
Yeah. Thanks. And you make a good point that it's also a lot of people will build an app, but if you don't instrument a lot of the analytics around it, underlying the app to be able to measure how often it's being used and so on, you're really missing a lot out, and that's where companies like Criticism, also the built-in analytics, the platforms like Accelerator, provide a lot of value outside just the pure development environment. That's something that people should certainly pay attention to. And Rami, why don't you give your perspective on this issue?
Yeah, I think I talk about that, but I would like to add one additional component, because I talk what are the key indicators to assess the return of any enterprise mobility investment in the improvement of the employee productivity and other factors, and like operational effectiveness, customer satisfaction, and ultimately revenue generation. But what is the mechanism that we use to capture those feedbacks? So we have a lot of surveys after each and every mobility service that we offer. We select a group of users from business that we can capture from them how those technology impacted in their daily business processes and how we can fine-tune it and update those. So that give us good feedback and indication how those mobile technology are able to help those users to achieve their business goals.
Okay, thank you. All right, we're moving into kind of the last question. I just want to remind everyone, I've seen a couple of questions come through, in the Q&A tab. Once we finish this, we're going to be open, and we'll probably run a few minutes long to try and address some of these. Please, add the questions now, and we'll try and answer them as we can. So this is how I like to try and end a roundtable. So at the very end of things, it's kind of your parting shot, your parting wisdom. If you could talk to someone in the audience who's now got responsibility for developing their company's mobile strategy, what's that like one key piece of advice that they ought to know? Or put another way, what did you wish you knew at the beginning, that you know now? So Rami, let's go back to you.
Yeah, good, thank you. So I think here the big lesson or now strategy is that design for the user first, device second, because mobile hype was everything around device. So now everything should be around the user. So many mobile initiative focus was on the concept like bring your own device, enterprise app store, without consideration how mobility investment will solve business challenges. So my recommendation is to calibrate mobile strategy to business architecture, not to the technology architecture.
That's really good advice. That's excellent advice, actually. Mike, how about you?
Well, there's a lot of things I've learned over the past 2 years, but what's becoming increasingly clear to me is mobility is about more than just a phone and an app. You know, it's a whole way of thinking. The number of platforms, devices, form factors are exploding now and will continue, in my estimation, to explode over the next few years. So whatever strategy you employ, whatever tools you select, whatever approaches you make, understand that you're not just building an app. There are many, many other elements of this space that you're going to need to account for. So I really think having some sort of flexible cross-platform technology to help build and deploy applications across a variety of mechanisms is going to be critically important going further. And just to add on to that, a corollary to that is that, in my estimation, there are no perfect solutions in this space. Planning horizons, I think, should be very short. Investments should be risk mitigated, either by capping the term or by keeping your options open. So when you're looking ahead, plan for a maximum of 18 months, because chances are what you're seeing now is going to be vastly different in a year and a half.
That's awesome. Thank you. And Maribel, last word. What do you got?
Gosh, they did a great job. I'm not sure I have much else except to say plan for reluctance. You know, people that are interested in mobile think mobile's amazing, but there's actually a lot of resistance in the organization of why should I give funding to mobile over other things, right? And then how do you prove the value of mobile? So those are things that I think people thought were inherently going to be a lot easier to do than they were. I think not getting so hung up in, the device of the day, thinking about cross devices, because we started out with smartphones and then we added tablets and now we're adding wearables, and trying to build strategies that say, okay, if all these devices exist, how do I break up my apps and processes to decide what things go on what device? What's a better experience on an iPad or a tablet versus a small screen on a wearable versus on a PC? And to think that your apps will cross from PC all the way through wearable. So what does that mean for you going forward?
Okay. That's the wearables piece with Apple Watch being available in about a week, probably a little bit higher on people's thoughts, but you're right. If you look at the use of the cross-device use of applications, that's a really big part of them understanding the mobile journey and making sure that the apps in your strategy map really well. So that's an excellent point. So before we turn to the audience Q&A, we're right at 2 o'clock, we're right at the top of the hour. So hopefully some of you can hang on. We'll go a few extra minutes. But Adam, do you want to talk about our
well, first I want to thank everyone for participating in the meeting, and especially thank our guests, Mike, Rami, and Maribel. This was an awesome conversation, and hopefully we can continue it. I wanted to open up the idea for everyone that if you want to talk about something in your mobile strategy, whether it's on the business side or IT side, it has to do with a specific technology or it's a more general strategic question, we're around for you. We have an offer from this webinar for a free 1-hour mobile advisory call, so I hope you take advantage of that. We also would like you to consider the Mobile Research Council and have a look at that. We think it can be really helpful, and some of the folks you hear today, they're all involved in the Mobile Research Council. So like Glenn said, it's 2:01. This is going to be recorded. It will be up on our website. If you want to stick around, I'm not sure if our guests can stick around, Glenn, but if you want to stick around for a few minutes, there are a number of questions that came in. We can answer a few of those, and just thanks again.
Okay. So Maribel, Mike, and Rami, you up for a couple of extra minutes, some extra time?
Sure, we can do that for you.
Okay.
Sure.
All right. So here's a question that came in. So, how often are we seeing people wanting to use kind of, responsive design apps on mobile devices as opposed to native applications? How do you look at that decision, and how big of an impact does that have on, the way that you approach, designing a kind of particular mobile strategy? Anyone feel like taking that one on?
Well, I'll just say from my perspective, I don't think you need to decide on one approach versus another. I think every use case is different, and the use case should dictate the approach. In our case, my team doesn't get involved in responsive design apps only because I really firmly believe that should be part of every web developer's toolkit, is the ability to design a website so that it can be rendered appropriately on a mobile device. But I think if you're looking for, a very enriched UI, a lot of interaction, a lot of exploitation of device features, I think, a native approach is the way to go, or some sort of cross-platform tool that results in a native app. I think, again, I think it depends on the use case.
Yeah, and yeah, as you say, I mean, that's definitely where, a Xamarin or an accelerator, MADP platform can come in really handy, because you get a lot of reuse of the code, but still get to take advantage of the unique device capabilities on each platform. And it can also be used for mobile web as well, although there's a little bit more modification required oftentimes from that perspective. So anyone, Rami or Maribel, anything to add to that?
Yeah, this is Rami. Just I would like to add one. I agree with Mike exactly that it depends on the cases, but what we have done to avoid repeating the same question in each mobile initiative, because we saw that always the discussion, how we go native, web, or hybrid. So what we have done, we built something we name it technical statement of direction, which is a reference document for all the app development and the infrastructure team to use it as a reference in taking decision regarding any key mobile application, how to select what are the pros and cons from BMO perspective to go in which direction regarding apps. So that we found that help us instead of keeping that discussion, or to have consistency in taking decision in which direction we go with each mobile app.
Thanks, Rami.
Yeah, I think from my perspective that I've talked to a lot of companies. They start out very philosophical. They want a single approach, and as soon as they get into it, they realize it's going to be multiple approaches. I believe on the responsive web design, the problem with responsive web design, to Mike's point, it's like the site should be designed so that you can use it on a mobile if you want to. One of the issues with that is, what are you trying to accomplish as a task? So mobile can be very task-oriented, and are you going to be able to get to the things that you need quickly, or is it going to feel cluttered? So when I was talking to, for example, with MGM Resorts the other day, they classified this as a responsive mobile web thing is for things that don't change a lot necessarily. So you want to figure out what the images of the rooms look like or something like that. But things that change a lot would necessarily go, or things that were loyalty related would go to an app. So that's kind of one way to think about it. Like, what's the use case, and is it task driven? Does it change a lot? How deep of the device functionality do you want to use? And I think that's what guides your decision. So in reality, I've not seen any single company I've dealt with be able to say, I'm going to do it all 100% this way.
Right. Okay. Let's take another question. So the question is about trying to figure out how to build an MCOE. And yeah, there are a couple of ways of doing it. You can kind of build it from the ground up with internal resources, or you can work with an external vendor to try and help build the MCOE, which could be not just the actual doing, and the fulfilling the roles of the MCOE, but also helping set the strategy, and the shape of the organization. So, Mike, you guys certainly started by building internally, so maybe you could talk about what the decision process was in your mind, but...
So the decision process regarding the nature of the MCOE, is that the question?
Well, right, and whether or not, the fact that you stood that up with internal resources as opposed to, either outsourcing that, completely, or to, whether or not it would make sense to use a third party to help determine the structure for it, even if it was done, staffed with internal resources. I think that was what
Sure.
the person was asking about.
Sure, and I think, from day one, the way the office, the charter for the office was to be an action-oriented office. So the decision was made that mobility is indeed a strategic capability, and we wanted to bring this knowledge and this expertise in-house and grow it in-house. So I think that was kind of what led us down that road in the first place. It was essentially a leadership decision at that point. So from day one, we were looking to not only research and govern and vet and recommend, but also to do. And to do that, though, obviously we didn't start off with a full staff. We did engage outside partners, and I think you need to do that throughout the life of your MCOE. I don't think you can do it all by yourself, but as long as you've got control on what's being done and you're engaging the right resources and going to the right vendors, doing your homework, I think that's more power to you. I think that's a good thing. And one of the things we did was after a year of our MCOE, we engaged an outside firm to come in and do sort of an audit on our MCOE to tell us what we were doing right and what we were doing wrong. And Propelics was our partner in that regard. That's how we came across Propelics. They did a great job of benchmarking us against other MCOEs for similar size businesses in similar industries. And that helped us refocus our efforts to make sure we were on the right path.
Great. Thanks, Mike. Rami or Maribel, any thoughts that you want to add to that question?
Yeah, and here, from BMO perspective, we spent time in investigating and doing internal analysis about mobile center of excellence, if it is for external versus internal, and how we integrate that mobile center of governance with other governance body in the bank. So we are still in the planning and preparation stage. We are trying to see what is the best model that we can build that mobile center of excellence without impacting our governance body or try to avoid building a restaurant inside a restaurant. So we are still in a deep internal discussion about that, and we see big value in the mobile center of excellence, and Propelics help us in those discussions. But still, I think we need more time to see how to articulate this governance body to get the return that we are looking for.
I think there's a role in third parties helping with a mobile center of excellence. I don't think that you can sort of full outsource your mobile center of excellence to somebody else. I certainly think people can help you get it kick-started, and I think that you can have people that come in and help you add things to it that you might not have thought of, sort of expand your world view of it. But at the end of the day, it's a very, your companies all have different business processes, and it's a very, personal corporate thing, what you need to do to get to the next level, what your governance structure is. So, like so many things we talk about in mobile, there's no one way to do business, so therefore there's no one way to do mobile, and different companies will have different structures. But I do think that there's a role an outside party could play, but I also think that you need to take responsibility for driving your company's initiatives forward and for understanding the needs of the company and how they're changing. And too often, I think when people go into mobile, they're just trying to recreate the same things that they've had for the past 20 years. And if you do that, you're going to die because you're not going to have any innovation, and you're not going to be able to have solutions that meet the needs of the next generation of work challenges, not even the next generation workforce. Because I don't like to say that mobile is something that, Gen Xers or Gen whatevers are driving. I mean, I think it's a tech profile. but I really think that you need to be very conscious of, what is it that you're trying to achieve with your mobile efforts?
Yeah, no, excellent points. So quick time check. It's 12 after. You guys have time for one more question?
One more.
Okay. All right. So there's one question that came through about using mobile in corporate training. So how much is mobile being used as part of the training curriculum within companies, and how is that evolving? Rami, I know that there was.
I can take this question.
Yeah.
We see big value in that, and I think it is also associated in a training, corporate training, and also we found there is a big opportunity in the marketing, also internal marketing concept or awareness program. So we are thinking of something like video on demand or some broadcasting material on all mobile devices where we can socialize a certain content. This is one part, and we are working with a certain vendor to see what are the best approach to we can offer awareness material on mobile devices. At the same time, we have in BMO we have IFL, which is event management services, and they have event management and all of that related to awareness and training. So we see big potential in this space where we can offer the content on mobile devices, but it's still under concept and preparation stage.
Yeah. I agree with that. For us, one of the biggest customers of the MCOE right now is our sales force. And we have a few initiatives in the works related to the coaching of those reps in how they make calls and how they interact and engage our customers. One of those components is the use of video to do reviews and coaching of the proper way to engage a customer. And we are looking at third-party resources that will allow us to embed video capabilities into our service offering. So I see huge benefits for training. And one other use case I'll throw out there, kind of a bit off the wall, but we do have a specialty sales force that is highly involved in the oncology medicine space, and where they make sales calls is at infusion clinics where cancer patients go to get treatment. One of the challenges for a sales rep, though, is to get trained on how to make those calls in infusion centers because they're not allowed in there. So we're actually looking at a virtual reality solution that will allow reps to kind of walk through the infusion center on their iPad prior to going into the clinic. So they get an orientation of how things are set up and can engage and practice their pitch without having to actually be in the clinic.
Yeah. And those are really good examples from both of you guys. One other thing I would just like to throw out there is that yes, different types of training might fit better for different devices. So a lot of the video stuff that maybe is could be more of an iPad use case, but also think about kind of like snacking training, where you can do training in really short bursts. I think of things like Duolingo or even Swifty, which is a new tool that helps you kind of learn how to program in Apple Swift language. But you can do kind of like short bursts of work in that in-between time. We have those micro moments, as some people try and use that term, which fits really well for mobile. So that's another thought around mobile training use cases. But with that, it's now 1/4 after the hour. We have some more questions, but unfortunately, we've already run a bit long. So we really want to thank everyone for attending on the call and sticking with us throughout the extension. And once again, I want to thank Maribel, Mike, and Rami for doing a fantastic job today, providing all their insights and learnings to everyone. And thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.